I'd been gone from home for 7 or 8 months. Really would not have been an issue. But in my head, there needed to be a reason why I wasn't at that TV. In retrospect, how many people would have cared? How many flags would have been raised? I said, why isn't Cactus Jack at TV? I thought I needed a reason, and the reason was I'm going to be stretchered out.
Right.
And for the $25 Friday, Saturday morning payoff, I took the Nestea plunge off the ring apron, and you could actually see on
That's
the thing.
what I'm getting at. That
spitting
Nestea
up,
plunge.
Yeah, spitting up, coughing up gobs of blood, and then Akbar cuts the great promo, where he goes, never mind that. Look at this expensive shirt. And Ak told me later, that's what he always did, was plant that seed,
right.
like that he deep down didn't care about his guys. But instead of going home, I got carried out. I wasn't going to let anybody see me walk out of that arena. I was going to wait until so many hours had elapsed that there would be nobody to see me leave. When I got powerbombed on the concrete by Vader in WCW, I left my car in the parking lot for 6 weeks because that was the type of thing that made a difference.
That's back in the old days. You'd have been gone in 3 days, 72 hours these days. Hey, man, when you used to drop that elbow.
Well, let me just make but the point was that's why I was in the crow's nest, because I didn't want anybody to see me leaving the sportatorium. And I just happened to be there on the day that class began. And you know the way a wrestling group school is. I mean, it's like you can kind of cast off just about almost all the guys almost immediately. And sometimes you're going to make a mistake, as people did with me. But it was like, oh, all right, that one kid's got that it thing going on. And obviously, it turned out to be you.
Yeah, shit, I want to go back to you dropping that elbow off, because, you always dropped it off on that one side, it seemed.
Yeah.
Because Crow's Nest was here, you drop it right there. Dude, what made you decide to take that leap of faith onto concrete way back in the day? And was it because that was who Cactus Jack was? Was he out of control, crazy, willing to inflict damage on a person however he could? Or were you looking at its core when you started doing that to be noticed by somebody to get a push?
Robert Fuller was one of the first guys that had faith in me. I think you had about as good a time in Memphis as I did. I've since made peace with Randy Hales. Randy brought me and my family to circus. I realized a valuable learning experience. You go in, you don't know who your opponent is until you get, you see your name on the chalkboard.
Right.
You walk out there, you haven't seen the guy, haven't talked to him, you're putting a match together. You're learning as you go. I learned a lot, but I wasn't treated particularly well there. And Robert was the guy who had faith in me. And Robert saw me take I'm going to drop a second F-bomb on you.
This is unleashed.
Robert saw me take that Nestea plunge at a spot show for a $25 payoff. And, man, that concrete just about knocked me out. And it opened up a nasty wound on the back of my head. And I went back in, and Robert goes, oh, damn, Jack. Looks like a pussy sitting on your head. I don't do Robert Fuller justice.
I've never asked anybody for an instant replay in all my life. Repeat that punchline again. Mother, that is tremendous.
All right, in slow motion. That looks like a big old pussy on your head. Damn, Jack. I don't know whether to stitch it or fuck it.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
But on the way home, he told me, "Listen, son, that's a mighty impressive bump." He said, "But you gotta take care of yourself. You have to do these things when they're meaningful." A couple weeks later, we're driving, and Robert's a lead heel in Memphis, and Robert had a great mind, and it just wasn't clicking that day. He's like, "I don't know what to do." Man, he didn't want to blow off the angle in the first week. He was looking for a way to do a return match. And I said, Rob, I have an idea. And
what was the program?
This is Jeff Jarrett had just gotten Robert's loaded boot.
Okay.
So he had the loaded boot, and we knew there was going to be trouble. And
to any of my Steve Austin show listeners out there that don't know what a loaded boot is, Mick, what is it? Because people are there, what the fuck's a loaded boot?
He actually had some kind of apparatus sewn into the sole of the boot, and he would kick it, and it would jingle, and then he would use it, and there'd be bloodshed.
For example, like when Cornette had the tennis racket, sometimes they would load that thing up, and they'd put a horseshoe in the zippered covers. That's loading. And that's putting a foreign object or a piece of steel, allegedly, or sometimes for a shoot, in an object. So Robert Fuller, loaded the
boot. Jeff Jarrett had gotten a hold of the loaded boot. We knew there was going to be trouble. But in Memphis, you have to come back 4 or 5 times. You're there every week. You have to think of a way to come back next Monday. And Robert was looking for a way to the next Monday without blowing off the program in the first week. and I was riding with Robert. If it had been anybody else in the territory, and I said, I've got an idea, I probably would have been just ignored or shunned. Right. And he goes, well, damn, Jack, let me hear it. And I said, well, I think this might be the time for that Nestea plunge. And as it turned out, I didn't know at the time that, the wrestling fans had their annual convention. And, I ended up taking that Nestea plunge in front of, like, the hardcore, Observer fans.
Right.
And I guess it left a pretty lasting memory. And there was, there's blood. I mean, it was a pretty wild scene, but it was the right bump for that show. And then every time, especially when I turned babyface, we were looking for ways to create that type of impact. From a selfish point of view, though, I realized, wait a second, I need to have something offensive. Like, this can't be my calling card.
You're sacrificing your body.
Yeah, like,
how do I... beating you up.
Right. How do I take that willingness and ability to absorb punishment and make it work for me offensively? And I wanted to be the guy. I mean, I was a Superfly fan. One of my firmest memories in college is I was looking out at this house. I was at a party, a sophomore in college, right before I ended up meeting DiNucci. And I was like just looking at the house next door. A guy comes over to me, a good friend of mine. He goes, what are you looking at? And I said, do you think if I dove off the top of that roof, would that garbage can break my fall? Like, I always wanted, I needed to know there was something. I was big, like, would that break my fall? All right, if I dive off of this sand dune with the waves coming out with those 3 inches, would that break my fall?
Right.
I wanted to be a Superfly guy. I couldn't because I couldn't balance on the top rope. And you couldn't do anything as good as Jimmy did. I'm a firm believer, why be the second best at something? It was a perfect fit. It was not likely to draw a single fan to one of my shows. But I was asked about the evolution